In the affluent town of Maplewood, a quiet storm was brewing at Maplewood Middle School. Maya Thompson, a disciplined and reserved girl, was about to face the biggest challenge of her life. Trained as a karate black belt since the age of 6, she was not just any girl. Her father, Marcus, a recently retired Army Ranger, had instilled in her the values of strength, resilience, and the importance of standing up for oneself. However, when 3 bullies decided to hang a noose in front of her locker, they had no idea they were awakening a force they couldn't comprehend. Maya was determined to confront a school system that protected bullies, a sheriff who ignored complaints, and a culture that silenced girls like her. When the school administration attempted to blame her for the incident instead of her aggressors, Maya resolved to break her silence and fight back. The morning sun cast a warm glow over Maplewood as Marcus's black SUV pulled up in front of the sprawling brick building of Maplewood Middle School. The manicured lawns and gleaming windows reflected the wealth surrounding the school. Maya sat quietly in the passenger seat, her neatly braided hair framing her face, her backpack resting on her lap. Marcus turned off the engine and looked at his daughter, his calm demeanor a reassuring presence. "Remember what we always say before training?" he asked gently. Maya nodded, her gaze fixed on the school entrance where students were streaming in. "Control your mind. Control your actions," she recited, the mantra as familiar to her as breathing. "Exactly," Marcus replied, his eyes reflecting the wisdom gained from years of service. "You're walking into a different kind of challenge today. But you have something many of these kids don't: discipline." Maya adjusted her blue sweater, smoothing out imaginary wrinkles. "I know that. Just like you taught me in the dojo. Observe first, react second." "Right," Marcus said, squeezing her shoulder. "You're my warrior princess. Not just because you can throw a perfect roundhouse kick, but because you know when not to." As students passed by their car, some cast curious glances at the new girl. Maya took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and stepped out of the vehicle. The crisp morning air carried the scent of fresh-cut grass and privilege. She walked through the main entrance, her movements measured and calm, just as she had been taught. The hallways buzzed with the typical energy of middle school: laughter, lockers slamming, teachers ushering students to class. But Maya felt the atmosphere shift as she walked through. Conversations paused, eyes followed her, and whispers began. She reached her locker, focusing on the combination lock, blocking out the noise. A group of girls nearby fell silent as she approached, then hurried away. The morning classes passed in a blur of introductions and awkward silences. No one sat next to her in homeroom. In math class, her perfect answers were met with surprised looks from the teacher. During lunch, she sat alone, using the time to observe her surroundings. It was during the passing period before her last class that she first noticed them, 3 boys lounging against the lockers, exuding the kind of confidence that comes from never facing consequences. The tallest one, with perfectly styled blonde hair and expensive sneakers, caught her eye and smirked. Maya kept walking, but her senses remained alert. As she passed, their voices carried clearly in the hallway. "Check out the new girl's hair," the tall one said, loud enough for her to hear. "Looks like something from a hardware store." Maya recognized him as Jake Anderson, a name she had heard in history class. The second boy, Ryan, laughed too loudly. Maybe she's trying to start a new trend. The third boy, stockier and quieter, just watched with cold eyes. Ethan, she learned later, the son of the town's biggest real estate mogul. "Bet she doesn't even wash it," Jake continued, his voice dripping with mock concern. "My dad says those people have different hygiene standards." More laughter erupted. Maya kept walking, her steps steady and unhurried. Years of training had taught her that true power lay in restraint. She rounded the corner and paused at her locker, listening to their continued comments with the same focused attention she used to study opponents before a match. Their words were carefully chosen, coded enough to maintain deniability, but clear in their intent. Maya organized her books with deliberate calm, noting their names in her mind, cataloging their faces and voices. Her father had taught her that information was often the best weapon. The bell rang, sending students scurrying to their final classes. Maya closed her locker softly, shouldered her bag, and walked away from the boys' laughter with her head held high. She was her father's daughter, a warrior who understood that sometimes the strongest move was no move at all. The cafeteria buzzed with the usual chaos, plastic trays clattering, wrapped sandwiches rustling, and dozens of overlapping conversations. Maya sat alone at the end of a long table, her packed lunch neatly arranged before her. The food was simple but carefully prepared: grilled chicken, brown rice, and steamed vegetables, just like her father made when he was focused on nutrition during his military training. She could feel the stares from the table of girls nearby, their whispers barely contained behind manicured hands. "Hey, you're Maya, right?" A girl with perfectly styled hair approached her table, clutching a designer purse. It was Chloe, a popular girl known for her social status. "Yes," Maya replied, keeping her voice neutral. Chloe shifted her weight, glancing back at her friends. "We were wondering if you wanted to sit with us." The invitation sounded more like a question, her tone suggesting it wasn't entirely her idea. Maya studied Chloe's face, reading the subtle tells just as her father had taught her, the slight tension around her eyes, the way she kept looking back at her friends. All signs pointed to this being some kind of setup. But she also remembered her father's words about always taking the high road. "Thank you," Maya said politely, gathering her lunch. She walked to their table with the same quiet confidence she carried onto the competition mat. The girls shifted uncomfortably as she sat down, creating a noticeable gap on either side of her. Maya could feel the tension building, like the moment before a sparring match began. "So, what's for lunch?" one girl, Sarah, drawled. Maya opened her container, revealing the carefully packed meal. The reaction was immediate. Exaggerated gagging sounds and theatrical coughing erupted from the group. "Oh my God, what is that smell?" Chloe pinched her nose, no longer trying to hide her disdain. "Smells like someone left their gym clothes in their locker too long," Sarah added, earning high-pitched giggles from the group. "Maybe it's her hair," another girl stage whispered. "My mom says they use all kinds of weird oils." Maya's hands remained steady as she closed her lunch container. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. "Your opponent's weakness shows in their need to attack. Your strength shows in how you respond." She stood up smoothly, her movements controlled and dignified. "Thank you for the invitation," she said, her voice clear and calm. The girls' laughter faltered slightly at her composure. Walking back to her original seat, Maya felt their stares but didn't give them the satisfaction of looking back. She reopened her lunch and continued eating, her posture perfect, her face serene. Inside, she was counting breaths the way she did during difficult training sessions. The rest of the school day passed in a blur of sideways glances and whispered comments. Maya maintained her focus, answering questions in class when called upon, taking careful notes, keeping her movements measured and precise. At home that evening, she sat across from her father at their kitchen table. Marcus had prepared a healthy dinner just like always: grilled fish, quinoa, and roasted vegetables. He believed in feeding both body and spirit with equal care. "How was school today?" he asked, his deep voice carrying the same steady calm it always did. "Fine," Maya said quietly, not meeting his eyes. "Just fine." Marcus watched her carefully, his years of reading situations and people picking up on the subtle signs of distress. "Yeah." Maya took a small bite, chewing slowly. "Nothing special." Her father didn't push, but his dark eyes held concern. He'd seen too much in his career not to recognize when someone was carrying a weight they didn't want to share. After dinner, Maya retreated to the garage they had converted into a home dojo. The space was simple but functional: training mats covering the floor, a few pieces of equipment along the walls, and a small shrine in the corner with her belt display. She changed into her GI, the white uniform crisp and clean. Tying her black belt with practiced movements, Maya centered herself on the mat and began her cut. Each move was precise, each stance perfect. Her breathing fell into the familiar rhythm as she moved through the forms she had practiced thousands of times. Punch, block, turn, straight. The movements were a meditation, a way to process emotions without words. As she moved through the complex series of techniques, Maya remained focused and quiet. The garage was silent except for the whisper of her GI and her controlled breathing. She didn't notice her father watching briefly from the doorway, his expression a mixture of pride and concern before quietly stepping away. The next morning, Maya walked down the hallway toward her locker, her steps measured and controlled as always. The morning crowd parted around her, but something felt different today. The usual whispers had been replaced by an eerie silence. Then she saw it. A thick rope hung from her locker door, twisted into an unmistakable shape. A noose. Below it, a piece of paper fluttered like a wounded bird. "Know your place," it read, written in thick black marker. The hallway went completely quiet. Maya felt time slow down, just like it did during tournament matches when everything narrowed to a single point of focus. Her hand didn't shake as she pulled out her phone and took a clear picture of the noose and sign. Another angle. Evidence secured just as her father had taught her. "Oh my God," Mrs. Johnson, her English teacher, rushed forward, her face pale as she fumbled with a pair of scissors from her classroom. "This is horrible." Maya stood perfectly still, her breathing controlled. From the corner of her eye, she could see Jake, Ryan, and Ethan standing by the water fountain, trying to hide their smirks. Principal Roberts appeared, his expensive loafers squeaking against the freshly waxed floor. "Everyone to class now," he barked, then lowered his voice. "Maya, please come with me to my office." As Mrs. Johnson cut down the noose with trembling hands, Maya followed the principal through the now emptying hallway. She kept her spine straight, her chin up, her face composed. She could hear her father's voice in her head. "Never let them see you rattled. Your calm is your armor." Principal Roberts's office was designed to impress: dark wood furniture, framed diplomas, a view of the manicured school grounds. He settled into his leather chair while Maya sat perfectly straight in the visitor's seat, her hands folded in her lap. "Now, Maya," he began, his tone carefully measured, "I want you to know we take these kinds of incidents very seriously." Maya met his gaze steadily. "It was a noose, Mr. Roberts, with a threatening message." He shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, well, sometimes students don't understand the historical implications of their actions. I'm sure whoever did this meant it as a poorly conceived prank." "A prank?" Maya repeated, her voice flat. "We'll conduct a thorough investigation," he assured her, shuffling some papers on his desk. "But these things can be complicated without direct evidence." "I have pictures," Maya said calmly, holding up her phone. Principal Roberts blinked. "Yes. Well, that's good, but we still need to be careful about making accusations without absolute proof of who was responsible." Maya noticed how he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. Now, she remembered her father explaining how people in power often tried to minimize problems they didn't want to deal with. "May I call my parents?" she asked. Of course, of course." He pushed his office phone toward her, but Maya was already pulling out her cell phone. Her father answered on the first ring. "Dad?" she said, her voice steady. "Someone hung a noose on my locker this morning with a threatening message." The silence on the other end was heavy with controlled anger. "Are you safe?" "Yes, I'm in the principal's office." "Stay there. I'm coming." Principal Roberts was already shaking his head. "That's really not necessary." "My father's coming," Maya stated simply. It wasn't a request. The next 20 minutes passed in tense silence. Maya sat perfectly still, her posture reflecting years of martial arts training. Principal Roberts made several phone calls, his voice low and urgent. When Marcus arrived, his presence filled the room. He wore simple civilian clothes, jeans and a dark button-down shirt, but carried himself with the unmistakable bearing of a warrior. His eyes took in everything, analyzing threats and exits with practiced efficiency. "Maya," he said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Show me." She held up her phone, displaying the photos she'd taken. Marcus studied them carefully, his expression unchanging. But Maya could feel the tension in his hand where it rested on her shoulder. Later that evening, in their kitchen, Maya pulled up the photos again. The noose looked even more menacing on the small screen, the threatening message more stark. Marcus stood at the counter, his hands pressed flat against the surface, studying the images. His face was like stone, but his eyes burned with a controlled fire Maya had rarely seen. "They just declared war," he said, his voice quiet but filled with certainty. Maya met her father's gaze, feeling the strength of generations flowing through her veins. "Then they're not ready for who we are." The next morning, Maya and Marcus sat in the waiting area outside Principal Roberts' office. Maya watched her father's hands, steady and relaxed, resting on his knees. He taught her that true power wasn't in showing anger but in controlling it. "Mr. Thompson, Maya, please come in," Principal Roberts called, his voice carrying forced cheerfulness. They entered the office where Mrs. Hayes, the school counselor, also sat waiting. Maya noticed how the principal's desk created a barrier between them, how he'd positioned himself like a judge about to deliver a verdict. "First, let me say how seriously we take any incident that makes our students feel uncomfortable," Roberts began, shuffling some papers on his desk. "Uncomfortable?" Marcus's voice was quiet but carried the weight of steel. "A noose isn't about comfort, Mr. Roberts. It's a death threat with historical significance." Roberts cleared his throat. "Yes. Well, after speaking with several students, we believe this was meant as a poorly conceived prank." Maya felt her father's energy shift beside her, like a tiger coiling before a strike. But his voice remained measured. "A prank," he repeated. "Kids sometimes don't think through the implications of their actions." Mrs. Hayes jumped in. "We've identified the students involved, and they'll receive 1 day of in-school suspension." "1 day?" Maya said, speaking for the first time. "For a death threat?" "Now, Maya," Mrs. Hayes leaned forward, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "I know this is upsetting, but we need to take the high road here. Show them you're the bigger person." "Stop saying that," Maya said quietly but firmly. "The high road isn't pretending threats don't matter." Roberts's expression hardened. "We've made our decision. The boys will serve their suspension today. I suggest we all move forward and put this unfortunate incident behind us." Marcus stood slowly, his movement deliberate. "Mr. Roberts, my daughter showed you respect by bringing this to your attention through proper channels. You've shown us exactly how much that respect is worth." "Is that a threat, Mr. Thompson?" "No, sir. Just an observation." Marcus's voice was perfectly controlled. "Maya, let's go." They walked out of the office in silence, their footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. Maya could hear Mrs. Hayes calling after them about choosing kindness and being the bigger person, but she didn't look back. That evening, Maya sat at their kitchen table, pushing her dinner around her plate. "They're not going to help us, are they?" she asked. Marcus placed his fork down carefully. "No, they're not. People like Roberts protect the system that protects them." "So, what do we do?" Maya asked, her father's eyes met hers. "You remember what I taught you about taking down a larger opponent?" Maya nodded. "Patience, position, pressure points." "Justice is the same way," Marcus said. "It doesn't come from people like Roberts. It comes from discipline, evidence, and exposure. We take the long road." "The boys are laughing about it," Maya said. "They were smirking in the cafeteria when I walked past." "Let them laugh. Pride comes before the fall." Marcus pushed his chair back and went to his office, returning with a fresh notebook. He placed it in front of Maya. "Start keeping track. Times, dates, witnesses, everything they say, everything they do. Build the case." "They don't think we're smart enough to make one," Maya said, opening the notebook. Its blank pages promised something like hope. She wrote the date at the top of the first page, then began listing what she'd observed. Jake's whispered comments in math class, Ryan's deliberate shoulder check in the hallway, Ethan's snickering when she raised her hand in history. "We're not just fighting them," Marcus said, watching her write. "We're fighting a system that wants us to stay quiet and take the high road." Maya looked up from her notes. "Then we'll fight both." The next morning, Maya stepped through Maplewood Middle School's front doors, her father's words echoing in her mind. The tiny microphone clipped inside her collar felt like armor, invisible but powerful. Marcus had shown her how to use it that morning, his hands steady as he attached it. "Remember," he'd said, "evidence is stronger than anger." The hallway seemed longer today. Students parted around her like water, some averting their eyes, others staring too long. Maya kept her pace steady, her breathing controlled like she did during kata practice. The microphone picked up every footstep, every whisper. Jake leaned against his locker as she approached, his smirk wide and cruel. "Hey, rope girl," he called, just loud enough for nearby students to hear. Maya's hand tightened on her backpack strap, but she kept walking. What's wrong? Ryan taunted from across the hall. Cat got your tongue? He made a pulling gesture with his hand, mimicking a noose tightening. Several students gasped, but no one said anything. Maya felt her heart pound but kept her face neutral. Inside her mind, she catalogued every detail, time, place, witnesses. The microphone captured it all. End first period math. Ethan sat behind her, occasionally making quiet choking sounds. Maya focused on her equations, her pencil moving steadily across the paper. When she raised her hand to answer a question, he whispered, "Careful. Might need a rope ladder to get that high." The teacher, Mrs. Peterson, frowned slightly but said nothing. Maya answered the question correctly, her voice clear and unwavering. She noted Mrs. Peterson's inaction in her mental log. Between classes, Chloe approached with fake concern. "I just want you to know," she said, her voice syrupy sweet, "I think what they did was totally wrong. Even if you don't really fit in here." Maya met her eyes. "Thank you for your concern," she said, each word measured and precise. The microphone caught Chloe's uncomfortable laugh as she retreated. At lunch, Maya sat alone again, but this time she positioned herself where she could observe the entire cafeteria. She watched Jake and his friends holding court at their table, noticed how teachers walked past without commenting on their loud jokes about hanging around and swinging by later. In her notebook, Maya documented each incident with military precision, just as her father had taught her. Time, location, witnesses, direct quotes. The growing list felt like building a case, gathering ammunition for a battle they didn't know was coming. During gym class, the whispers grew bolder. "Wonder if her dad taught her how to climb ropes," Ryan said loudly as they lined up for volleyball. "Bet it runs in the family." Maya served the ball with perfect form, the satisfying smack echoing through the gym. She remembered her father's words about power, not in showing it, but in knowing you have it. After school, Jake and his friends followed her to her locker, maintaining just enough distance to claim innocence. "Hey, rope girl," Ethan called. "Need help tying your shoes?" Maya closed her locker carefully, checking that the camera hidden in her phone case captured their reflections in the metal door. She turned and walked away, her steps unhurried. "What? Too good to talk to us now?" Jake's voice carried down the hall. Acting all high and mighty. Maya kept walking, each step measured, each breath controlled. The microphone recorded their laughter, their footsteps, their continued taunts until she reached the school exit. At home, in their garage dojo, Maya changed into her GI while Marcus reviewed the day's recordings. The familiar weight of her black belt centered her as she began warming up. "Good work," Marcus said, setting down his laptop. "You captured everything clearly." He stood and moved to the center of the mat, assuming a ready stance. "Now we train harder." Maya mirrored his position, feeling the strength in her stance, the power in her core. The garage lights cast their shadows long across the floor. Father and daughter, teacher and student, warriors preparing. "They think silence is weakness," Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "But you know better. You've got power they can't imagine." Maya nodded, her body relaxing into the familiar forms as they began. Each movement was precise, controlled, a reminder of the strength that ran deeper than any taunt or threat could reach. The sound of their synchronized movements filled the garage, the whisper of fabric, the sharp exhale of breath, the solid impact of feet on the mat. This was their answer to hate, discipline, precision, and patience. The next day, Maya stood in the girls' locker room, changing after PE class. The room was nearly empty. Most students had already left for their next period. She took her time, carefully folding her gym clothes, remembering her father's lessons about staying aware of her surroundings. Heavy footsteps approached from behind. Maya tensed, recognizing the pattern of multiple people trying to walk quietly. She turned just as Jake, Ryan, and Ethan rounded the corner into the changing area. "This is the girls' locker room," Maya said calmly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Jake's smirk widened. "Oh, we know, but see, we figured you needed a little physical education." He bounced a basketball between his hands, the hollow sound echoing off the metal lockers. Yeah, Ryan added, shifting to block the exit. Some extra credit work. Maya scanned the room, noting positions, distances, obstacles, just like her father taught her. 3 boys, 1 exit, 4 rows of lockers, no witnesses. Exactly what they'd planned. You should leave, Maya warned, her voice low but firm. Or what? Ethan sneered. Going to cry to Daddy or maybe hang around after class? Jake suddenly whipped the basketball at Maya's head. She ducked smoothly, the ball crashing into the lockers behind her with a deafening bang. Her heart pounded, but her breathing remained controlled. Nice moves, Jake taunted, taking a step closer. But you can't dodge everything. Ryan lunged forward, grabbing Maya's wrist. Got you now, rope. Maya moved without hesitation. Years of training took over. She twisted her captured arm, using Ryan's momentum against him. Her grip locked around his wrist, applying precise pressure to the nerve points. Ryan's eyes widened in shock as she stepped past him, sweeping his legs while maintaining the wrist lock. He hit the floor hard, the impact forcing the air from his lungs. Maya released him immediately, stepping back into a defensive stance. What the hell? Jake shouted, his face red with rage and embarrassment. Ryan scrambled backward on the floor, cradling his wrist. She attacked me. You all saw it, Ryan gasped at Maya's steady gaze made Jake hesitate as he moved forward, fists clenched. The power dynamic had shifted, and they all felt it. Miss Thompson. A sharp voice cut through the tension. Mrs. Peterson stood in the doorway, her face twisted with shock and disapproval. What is going on here? She attacked Chase. Jake pointed accusingly. We were just coming to get our basketball, and she went crazy. That's not true, Maya said calmly. They cornered me. They threw the ball at my head. Chase grabbed me first. Mrs. Peterson's eyes narrowed. Boys, this is the girls' locker room. You shouldn't be in here. She paused, looking at Ryan, still on the floor. But violence is never the answer, Miss Thompson. Come with me to the principal's office. Now. Maya gathered her things quietly, noting how quickly the boys' expressions changed from fear to triumph. They knew the system would protect them again. In Principal Roberts' office, Maya sat straight-backed in the hard plastic chair while he lectured about appropriate responses and school policy. Her recorded evidence of the attack was dismissed as irrelevant since she had escalated to violence. 3 days suspension, Roberts announced, not meeting her eyes. We have zero tolerance for fighting, Miss Thompson. I'm sure you understand. Maya nodded once, her face carefully blank. I understand perfectly, sir. When Marcus picked her up, his face was calm as she explained what happened. He listened without interrupting, his hands steady on the steering wheel. They're getting desperate, he said finally. Trying to provoke you into making mistakes. But you didn't make a mistake, Maya. You defended yourself with control and precision. But they're still winning, Maya said, frustration finally cracking through her composure. They attacked me, and I'm the one getting punished. Marcus pulled into their driveway and turned off the engine. No, they're losing. They just don't know it yet. He turned to face her. They wanted you to be the monster they imagine. Instead, you showed them discipline and skill. That scares them more than any violence could. Maya met her father's steady gaze. What do we do now? Now. Marcus's eyes held a familiar strategic gleam. They want to see the monster. Let's give them the truth instead. The next morning, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Malik Jones, a classmate who had been bullied in the past. I heard what happened. I want to help. Maya smiled slightly, feeling a sense of camaraderie. Let's meet after school. That afternoon, they sat in the library, surrounded by stacks of books. Malik looked nervous but determined. I've seen what they do to you. I want to share my story. Maya nodded, encouraging him. We need to gather evidence. Every story matters. As they talked, more students began to join them, each with their own experiences of bullying and harassment. They shared their stories, documenting everything meticulously. Maya felt a sense of purpose growing within her. Days turned into weeks, and the group continued to gather evidence, building a case against the bullies and the school administration. They recorded testimonies, collected screenshots of social media posts, and documented incidents of harassment. One evening, as they sat in Maya's living room, Marcus walked in with a serious expression. "I've been in touch with a civil rights attorney. She's willing to help us." Maya's heart raced. "Really? What can she do?" "She can guide us through the legal process and help us file a complaint against the school," Marcus explained. "We need to hold them accountable." With the attorney's help, they filed a formal complaint, detailing the harassment and the school's failure to act. The news spread quickly, and soon, local media outlets were covering the story. Maya stood in front of the cameras, her voice steady as she spoke about her experiences. "We won't be silenced anymore. We're fighting for every student who has been bullied and ignored." The support from the community grew stronger. Students organized rallies, demanding change and accountability from the school administration. The tide was turning. As the investigation unfolded, Maya felt a sense of empowerment. She was no longer the quiet girl hiding in the shadows. She was a warrior, fighting for justice and equality. In the end, the school administration was forced to confront the truth. They implemented new policies, providing resources for students facing bullying and harassment. The bullies were held accountable for their actions, and the community began to heal. Maya stood tall, knowing that she had played a crucial role in bringing about change. She had turned a noose into a catalyst for transformation, proving that strength lies not just in physical ability but in the courage to stand up for what is right. As she walked through the halls of Maplewood Middle School, she felt the weight of her journey behind her. She was no longer just Maya Thompson. She was a symbol of resilience and hope for all those who had been silenced. And as she stepped into the future, she knew that her fight was far from over. There were still battles to be fought, but she was ready, armed with the truth, the support of her community, and the unwavering belief that change was possible.